If you've got deep North American roots, you are more likely to find certain ethnicities in your mix based on where your ancestors settled. For instance, Nova Scotia and Quebec, obviously it's going to be French. However, there was a Scottish settlement in Nova Scotia, and you may have a little bit of British, but it's more likely you're going to have French. Now, if your ancestors came over a little bit later and settled in Ontario, you're going to have Irish. If your ancestors came over and settled in BC, obviously that would have been much later, you're more likely going to have British and or Irish. The Saskatchewan, more than likely, is because they came over, you might have French. If it's more southern Saskatchewan, you might find you've got some British, some Irish, some Scottish, even some Ukrainian. Definitely going to have some Ukrainian if your ancestors came over later and settled in Alberta. But what about the States? Obviously, the Brits settled the 13 colonies, so you're covered there. However, in New York, if you've got New York roots, deep New York, you're going to have some Dutch, more than likely. New Jersey, you probably got some Scottish in you. Now, Pennsylvania, this is from my findings. Every time I come up with Pennsylvania in a person's tree, lots of German. Definitely a lot of Germans settled, especially Germantown, right? Pennsylvania. Ohio is going to give you Irish, surprisingly. A lot of them came down through Canada and settled in Ohio. California, going to be more like BC. You're going to get that British, Scottish, possibly some Irish in there mixture. Those would have been settled much later. Texas would have come over from Virginia or from Louisiana. You might get some French. And of course, Louisiana, you're going to have the French. Later, some came over from Virginia into Louisiana, so you're going to have more British there too. Now, Florida, you might have some French if you've got those deep Florida roots. However, there once upon a time was a colony of Frenchies in Florida. That's probably who populated Haiti, so you're going to have French in Haiti. They were actually kicked out of Florida. There was some drama back then with the Spaniards, and the French lost. Mostly you're going to have a whole lot of British if your people came over from the colonies. But check your family trees, see where your people settled and were for the longest time before migrating over to the West Coast. Obviously, there's a lot of ethnicities I did not cover. There's Welsh. I don't know exactly what areas that they settled, so don't come at me in the comments. I'm just covering the ones that I know for a fact where they settled.